Hi, CAM followers. Hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us again this evening. We are going to be talking to Barbara again. For those of you who didn't tune in last week, we have had the lovely Barbara Houlding with us twice last week, and we've got her tonight and tomorrow talking all about hydrotherapy and owner's guides, guiding us through what we should be looking for, expecting when we're taking our dogs for hydrotherapy. So last week we had 2 sessions, and tonight we're going to, you can go back and watch them anytime. They're on the Facebook page, the Canine Arthritis Facebook page, and they will also be on YouTube once we finish this series under the Canine Arthritis Management channel. They will all be there. So tonight, Barbara is back, and we are going to be talking about hydrotherapy equipment. So to me, when I think about hydrotherapy, I'm just thinking pool, and more recently, I'm thinking about the Underwater Treadmill. But to be honest, that's kind of where my knowledge of hydrotherapy ends. And I suspect it would be similar for a lot of people as well. So as usual, if you do have questions or comments on what we're saying, please do pop them down in the comments, and I will try and keep on top of those as well while Barbara is speaking. So if you didn't watch last week, Barbara is a canine physiotherapist and hydrotherapist. She's been working for many years and very experienced. So I'm going to pass, no, and many is in a good way. I'm going to pass it over to her. Would you like me to immediately share the screen, Barbara?
I think that would be lovely to sort of show the poster, because we've been building this poster. If you haven't got it, I think, Nikki, did you have the link in the chat somewhere? Yeah,
it's on the links in the blurby bit right at the top of both of the sessions from last week. It's there, and it will be from tonight as well.
So I'm seeing the comments coming up, and it's great to see so many people attending, and I really appreciate you giving up your evening. Please do ask your questions in there, and it's just lovely to see so many names I know, but if I haven't met you, please say hi and where you're from. The poster is something that's a little bit unusual, but I've built it for CAM to give them that information poster. So like you'd have a body score poster, this is a poster with all the questions that everybody's been asking. So I'm just going to scroll down, and we're building it as we go along. So each episode, so after tomorrow night, it's complete. So please grab the URL, bookmark it. It's a living page, so we're building it live. Bit hairy today when we were building it, wondering if anyone is watching, because it just looks like a Harry Potter page.
Fantastic photos tonight.
Thank you. So this is episode 3, and I just wanted to bust a myth that has been around for a long, long time. And the analogy I want to use to help us think about this is, imagine that you've got a hydrotherapy pool, not a swimming pool. We're talking about a hydro pool, and that's like a van. And then we've also got the underwater treadmill, a bit smaller, like a Fiat 500. And both of those are vehicles. They take you from one place to the other, but the quality of the driving is down to the driver. So we've got to bust this myth that the therapist is the person delivering. It's not. You're not being treated by a treadmill, and you're not being treated by a pool. So I hope that analogy makes sense. You are being treated by the therapist. So it's not about one working and not the other, and it's not about one versus the other. They both offer a sanitized pool of warm water or a body of warm water to work in. So it's what the therapist does with your dog in that
It's just one of their tools, isn't it? It's a tool.
It is a
for
tool.
The therapist.
It's a hugely expensive. It's a hugely expensive tool. It's very expensive to run. You know, when you're accessing the service from these really amazing canine hydrotherapists and canine therapists, they work really hard. The behind the scenes of keeping that water as it should be. It should be like in the pictures. It's a lot of work. So the other thing is, thank you so much for all the emails you sent, and a couple of really important questions that kept coming up time and time again. And I think 2 very important questions that owners need to ask when they're researching, because I notice on the CAM web, you know, on the pages and Holly's Army, there's so much research and sharing knowledge, which is absolutely brilliant. So the 2 key questions you need to know, because I'm talking about therapeutic canine hydrotherapy, nothing else. It's a therapy that you're buying a service that is being deemed to be safe and effective and to improve your dog's movement, or for fitness or for conditioning. This is a serious business. The first is, does the therapist enter the hydro pool or the underwater treadmill and have hands-on contact with your dog throughout the therapeutic hydrotherapy session? So the therapist should be communicating through a transmission hold at all times as the dog's entering the pool, going into the pool, working the pool, whether it's a treadmill, going into the treadmill, working the treadmill, coming out of the treadmill. There should be no hands-off experience, and that's really important. Does the therapist get into the body of water with your wonderful dog? That's a key question. The second one, believe it or not, it's really important just for your peace of mind. Is this a one-to-one session? So it's about, you may actually have 2 therapists with 1 dog or 3 therapists. So staffing levels will reflect the complexity of the dog, or if it's a giant breed, or, it might have layered problems. But you want to know, is it a one-to-one session between the therapist or therapist and your dog? Okay, within the aquatic treadmill. So multi-dog swimming is nothing to do with canine hydrotherapy. That's therapeutic. And more than 1 dog in a treadmill is definitely nothing to do with therapeutic canine hydrotherapy. So those 2 questions really help the owners decide, is this the service I wish to access and purchase for their lovely dog?
Yeah. This is, like you said, this is a treatment. This is a therapeutic treatment. This is sport for fun. This is part of your multimodal approach to your arthritis case, isn't it? So
absolutely. And my focus is very much, so we see a huge number of complex cases and a huge number of complex neurological cases, and senior dogs as well with arthritis and multiple problems. So the thing is, how does the therapist use the equipment? Okay, so I'm going to talk about that a bit further on, but I just wanted to show you these pictures. So with the elderly dog, with the senior dog, therapeutic showering sessions have been used now, for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. They're hugely useful because you can have a complete session with the therapeutic shower with the dog if you've got the skills to apply the various treatments with the shower. And that might be, and it's really tiring as well for the dog. So that might be really appropriate for the senior dog. Or they may be showering before and after. The treadmill is a body of water, so you can use it with your hand transmitting information to the dog, and the dog's moving in the treadmill where it wants. So it's not free work. They are connected with the therapist, but not on the belt. You can have static work. You can raise the water up and use it like a canal because it optimizes that sagittal plane forward movement. Okay, and the transition from when you bring that water level down to moving into walking, now that might not be for a senior dog, but these are all possibilities. So it's how you use the equipment. It's really historic and has stuck with this idea that it's one piece of equipment versus the other. It isn't at all. And it's just it's moved on so much in the last few years. And then the picture on the right, I don't know if people can see, there's a water line in there. That's how clear the water should look. It shouldn't be murky. And that is an elderly dog. She was 16 when we took that shot, and she was working in the treadmill, and she was having problems rising with that stiffness. So what the therapist would do, they're going to incorporate, they chunk down the sequence of movement, and they would incorporate that by having that lovely dog on the therapist's lap. The therapist can then lift, and the dog can, because starting movement's the hardest bit of the movement, changing direction, braking. So you're going to do static work, you're going to do dynamic work, and that's what's so exciting. It's an art form based in science that you're going to create this individual program for each dog because they're all so different.
And I guess that means then that, so some weeks, or when you first see a dog and you work out a plan, you might use the underwater treadmill, and then another week, if things have changed, you may want to use the pool or the showering. So it's not always going to be the same each time, I guess.
No, it's going, because every reassessment is going to flag up different things, and your treatment goals are going to, shift slightly as the dog progresses and improves. So yeah, definitely. So the main bits of equipment for this evening, we're going to, as you said, talk about the 3 main bits of equipment. I'm not really referring to a spa pool because things have changed so much since then, but bear with me because tomorrow we're going to look at the smaller bits of equipment and kind of analyze and think about those. But today, just really looking at these main pieces of equipment. And so again, the dog's not just going to arrive and be put in a piece of equipment. The canine therapist is going to use this variety of techniques to calmly introduce and familiarize the dog using lots of different positive behavior solutions and working with the dog in a therapeutic manner with therapeutic touch and therapeutic holds. And so in that wet room, they're going to help the dog, because it doesn't matter if the owner says, my dog loves water, or my dog's terrified of water. There's nothing usual about going into a wet room with someone in a wetsuit and not having choices, connected with the therapist, checking in with the owner if they're in the building, but usually they were, but not now. And then going into a body of water, and it's got to be safe. Right at the beginning, episode 1, safe and effective canine hydrotherapy techniques. So you cannot compromise on safety.
For anyone that missed that is kind of what we were talking about a lot in the episode last week, episode 1 last week, isn't it? So do go back if you want some more information on that.
Yes. So the first question, when you've found out how they work, are they in the equipment? Is my dog having that one-to-one session? Is there a hydro pool, or is there an underwater treadmill, or are there both? Because you'd want to know. And because there's so much misinformation and people kind of say things from their own perspective, you just need to find out. And the treadmill and the pool are not treating the dog, it's the therapist. So it will work in anything, because they're going to make a clinical judgment what is the best fit for this dog, depending on the assessment. So some mythbusters. Does the size of the hydrotherapy equipment matter? It does. Okay, so the thing is, I don't know why, but there was a lot of misinformation 15 years ago. A lot of people have got swimming pools. They are not hydro pools. They are large bodies of water, because they thought that was the best thing at the time. But if you look into any human hydrotherapy, the pools hydro pools are very small for a reason. Because you're going to do therapy in them. You're going to do therapeutic exercises. You're going to do manual therapies, and it's about the depth of the water and the access in and out. So the hydrotherapy equipment, the pool, it's not bigger is better. It's actually that it functions really well to deliver therapeutic hydrotherapy. The treadmill needs to be big enough for the therapist to comfortably get in. So if you've got a tiny treadmill,
also to be either in front or behind, and also alongside the dog, I would imagine. So it's kind of the width and the length of it for the underwater treadmill.
For the underwater treadmill, and we're going to look at because the therapist is also going to make the choices of the equipment based on other factors, because they may not have the space for an underwater treadmill, because believe it or not, you need a really long room to have appropriate access into and out of it. And a pool, you need a sized room, and you've got to have someone who, if you're renting space, has no qualms about you coming in and digging a hole. And you're not going to have, not everyone's going to have both pieces of equipment, because that would mean you'd have to run double clinics, you'll have double running costs, you're going to have double staff. So they're going to choose the equipment for lots of other reasons, not just the therapeutic benefits. And if you talk to anybody, this is where a lot of misinformation, you'll say, people say treadmill's good for this condition, or a pool's better for this condition. It's what the therapist does in the body of water. And
so you shouldn't just be switched off. You wouldn't be turned off of one centre just because they didn't have the treadmill. You wouldn't go away and think, well, I'm not going to use them, because it's like that's the least important part of it. It's the therapist that is the most important. The dog and the therapist are the most important parts of this.
Absolutely. And then 8 years ago, whatever, people were saying, well, it's really important because you walk in the treadmill and that's much better, it's more appropriate to gait re-education. Well, that isn't supported by science. And when you look at how people use the pool, you'll realize they have underwater platforms and pods, so they have a natural gait pattern. So it's really choosing a piece of equipment that they can offer an amazing service, and there'll always be a bias if they've only got one or the other, because they've got the great skills to work in them. So you build your skills for the equipment you're using. Like in the vet practice, you're going to be amazing using a scanner that you're very experienced on using compared to another one. So the temperature of the water, the other thing is, it's canine hydrotherapy, it's going to be warm water that's sanitized. And again, you need to understand that will be modified by the therapist with their skills and knowledge for different dogs. And we're also going to look at the environment tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to talk about humidity, the environment, the ventilation of the room, because it's really, really important for safe practice. But it's just to give you an idea. It shouldn't be cold water. It shouldn't be lukewarm. But in human practice, water is much warmer than in canine practice. But most people are kind of working around, I would say, like maybe 29, 30. We work between 30 and 32. because it should be warm, But my shower systems are much warmer, just like when you get in the shower, it's much warmer.
Yeah, has to be, So then when we're talking, about maybe using do you talk about the hydrotherapy pool first with respect to what we can do in it?
So I have both, and if you've got someone who's got both, then ask them what they do, rather than because everybody's going to be focused on their equipment. But basically, hydrotherapy pool positions really matter. Pools in the middle of a room are they raise the risk because there's a lot of exit routes for the dog. So, and dogs, because of clinic enrichment and they're designed to move forwards in a straight line, and their proprioceptors in their eyes give them lots of information that if you use clinic enrichment techniques, if you've got it in a corner with two walls, that's really useful for the dog to be able to cope with that kind of entry. Now, the other thing you need to know is the pool ground, because if the dog's in the ground and you've got your owner there and they're going to be checking in, that's natural canine behavior. Some dogs more than others. You're going to have a lot of extra forces, additional forces, because the dog's going to be extending its neck because it's ground level and everyone's higher, just like me.
Yeah.
I'm short and I spend my life looking up at everybody. And it hurts my neck. So 5'3", I'm vertically challenged. So
that's a good point, actually.
So you're looking for the ideal pool if you're putting in a pool. But you remember, therapists are amazing solution finders and solution makers. They will have found something to work for them. So the optimum really is a pool that's half in and half out, because then when the owner sits down, you don't want the owner standing up and pacing around. You want the owner sat down so the dog can focus on them in that point, and it helps the owners as well just relax and be more neutral. Whereas if they're up and pacing, or they look like they're on the way to move, the dog's going to be very distracted. So again, half in, half out, and eye levels are together. Of the people they love the most. So that works really well. But then you've got to think of access up and into it, whereas ground level, you're just going down into it. So there's that. And then there's some pools where you can't dig a hole. So they have been put in a room, and what lots of people will do is raise the level of the floor to minimize that height, because it's really, really unnerving for the dog if they have to go quite high and then down into the equipment. So access into it and out of it is really important. It's safe, but we also use therapeutic ramps. So ours are designed to do therapeutic treatments on. And so I love it that equipment has multi-uses. So,
definitely.
But again, with the underwater treadmill, the access is a real issue, because a lot of the products come with really steep, short little ramps. So building therapeutic ramps so the senior dog or the older dog can access it smoothly and get into it and then come out of it smoothly is really important too.
So if we're talking about the hydrotherapy pool now, what kind of things can we expect to see inside the hydrotherapy pool? So along the floor, it's not, I think you were talking earlier about, in the photos I've seen, there are different levels. So can you talk to us a bit about that?
I can. So I kind of feel we've covered size. Size doesn't matter from the point of view that bigger is better. It's quite the opposite. And how can an underwater treadmill offer a productive therapy session if you're saying it only works in a pool if it's massive? It doesn't make sense. So it's what you do in that water. We've looked at access. Access is incredibly important for the senior dog. That's going to be a real limiting factor if it's not easy access for the dog. And also like the positioning of the equipment. You can't have an underwater treadmill against a wall, or it should have two doors so the dog goes in and through and out. That's the optimum. Forwards. So, you don't want the dog to have to turn around to come out, and you don't want it to be lifted in and out because there's no access into it. So all these things are complicated for the therapist to kind of plan at the planning stage, but sometimes they inherent sort of tricky solutions. So they'll find a way to get around it. So just before we go on to the pods, underwater pods, I just want to talk about the other incredible piece of equipment, and that is the therapeutic showering equipment. So we have a system of different therapeutic showers, and we know that we can use aqua massage, aquamyofascial release, sensory work. We teach this at all levels on all our courses, and it has the most profound impact on the senior dog. I mean, like seriously improves their movement with the therapist when they know how to use these tools. So let's not leave that out. Whereas people kind of think it's hygiene before and after, it's got much more of a use as a main tool as well.
Yeah. So with the showering, is that the most recent? I mean, is that the most recent thing that has been used? So it's sort of pool first, then treadmill, then showering being the whole way through.
Yeah, the showering techniques are not new. I kind of opened Canine HS for the Royal Veterinary College's master's course, and I introduced, and I've been introducing everyone on the level 3 certificate to therapeutic showering for like 11, 12 years. This is not new. No.
Okay.
And loads of people use it to amazing effect. So these are kind of things owners need to know about, what to ask to search for because the most important thing is that the senior dog is not fatigued beyond the point of being able to support itself, and it gets stiffer in the next few days because it's very easy to overexert a dog in these warm bodies of water, which give you lots of properties that you can work with to enhance the dog's movement. But you are not swimming a dog or walking a dog. You are using therapeutic techniques to improve their land-based movement.
Yeah. Yeah. We've just got a little question that might just fit in here from Daniela. Daniela's written, hello, vet student. What would you say is the best area to set the equipment when speaking of the hydro pool? Near a window, a closed room? I mean, are we going to talk about that tomorrow more?
Yeah, and that's such an important question. Thank you so much, Daniela. That's really, really important. It's about ventilation. You are going to be limited by your walls. If you're building from new, you're not. But if you've inherited a space, you've got to kind of look at it and optimize what you can with the equipment within that. But we're going to cover ventilation and dehumidification systems tomorrow. Yeah, definitely. The environment. Yeah. So tune in tomorrow, Daniela, but thank you so much. So again, especially when we're thinking of the senior dog, how is the dog going to work in this water and how is it going to rest? It needs rest periods. It can't be constant. So I think this is where there's a bit of miscommunication with language because people advertise swims or advertise, use wording that people think they're going to be in the body of water for
an hour or...
It's not going to happen unless they're a really young, fit dog. That's an endurance animal, or it depends on the role of the dog. So, but then it's kind of like thinking I go to the doctors, I talk to the doctor, or I go to the vets and I talk to the vets, and the vet does a few clinical things with the dog that might take a few minutes, but out of the whole of the therapy session, out of the whole session, they're doing lots of other things as well, and advice and assessing and. So I think it's wording that's caused people to be confused because sometimes the dog will be in this body of water for a few minutes. And if it's a senior dog, it might be very limited, but it's going to have such a beneficial impact on the dog's balance and coordination and toileting and getting into the car. So it's getting the right sort of balance of the techniques you do. But with the senior dog and the neurological cases, you just must never fatigue them. Whereas the young, fit dogs, if you want to strengthen muscle, you are going to fatigue them. So that's the therapist's skill. They've done a lot of training to have that knowledge and to be able to implement it.
Yeah. So, of course, we're talking mainly about arthritic dogs. So that's,
and they have to have rest periods. You can't just work them.
If you, I mean, this comes back to what we were talking about last week, but if you're paying for 30 minutes of hydrotherapy and you're in, and this is something that happens a lot, you get questions, I only get 5 minutes in the water. I feel like I'm not really getting my value for money. Well, you are, because like you say, more than that would not be beneficial for your dog.
No,
so
it's got to be safe and it's got to be effective. There's no budging on those two things. It cannot be detrimental to the dog who then comes out, thought it was fantastic, has had a bit of a free-for-all and can hardly move the next day. And then is so stiff over the next few weeks, so it should be beneficial. And it's got to be really controlled, focused and calm and engaged. It's really important to optimize that dog's land-based movement and to be able to offer a treatment that significantly improves it really rapidly. This is not a swimming club. That's the other thing. So the hydrotherapy pool, if you have a hydro pool, not a swimming pool, the idea is a small hydrotherapy pool, which is a body of warm water. You can actually change your water levels very easily. And you've got choices of underwater pods and platforms. And I think this is what we were talking about, Nikki. You hadn't really come across this that much. So
well, I hadn't really thought about it, if I'm honest. I thought hydrotherapy, I didn't necessarily think there was swimming. I thought there would be areas where they could maybe touch the floor, of the pool. But actually having pods and platforms makes a huge amount of sense, really.
Yeah, with the hydrotherapy, you need a depth of water as well as a body of water. To be able to optimize those different water properties, which is your temperature and your buoyancy and your resistance, they all kind of happen at the same time. So it gives you a lot of choices as the therapist. So there's underwater pods, there's underwater platforms, and your lovely dog is going to do static work or dynamic work or a combination of the two. But if we've got a really elderly arthritic dog, they may be taken very mindfully into the pool and have balance work with the high water levels, and then come out, and that would be it.
Can you just tell us, just for anyone that's not quite clear on what sort of static and dynamic the difference might be, could you just kind of clarify what those two things would be?
Okay, so static work is much more tiring, definitely, we know that. And what that is sort of movement where it's, think of canine Pilates and canine Tai Chi, kind of canine Pilates balance work, posture adjustments. It's very small work where the dog is working in a particular posture with the therapist. And then dynamic work will be movement, as in walking, swimming, walking along the pods in the underwater, on the pool. So I've got some pictures here. Can you see? So if I just bring up the poster, I hope everyone can see the posters. In the top left, an amazing therapist called Claire from Canine Clinic in Cork. I'm going to give her a loud shout. That's her pool. And you can see she comes in at the other end. It's a really lovely entry, perfect for the elderly dog and complex cases. Yeah. She's got an underwater track all the way along the back end, and it comes around to a platform. So she may have dogs that she treats on that, and they don't go in the body of water. Or she may, so it's going to be such an individual thing for each dog. And it's not about swimming laps. I mean, that's 10, 15 years ago. Swim laps or timed walks in a treadmill, that's gone. This is all about all you need is one sequence where it's a repetitive sequence, maybe 3-4 strokes with the dog in the water, and then doing some static work, because you're trying to improve land-based movement. We're not making swimmers of dogs. You're using muscles, and you're recruiting the sequence of muscles. Muscles don't work alone. They're like buses. They all work together in a very organized sequence, controlled by the neurological system. So what we want to do is replicate useful sequences to help the dog's toileting improve, to help them to be able to get up. So the you can see in the second picture along, I don't know if you can see my marker here. Oops,
we can. We can see
that
it.
One. Okay, so a small hydrotherapy pool, and you can see the external ramp. So we need to think of the external ramp and the internal ramp. That internal ramp, a little bit steep for us. That's our pool. Our next pool is we're going to adjust it, because we found out what we really need, but we're still going to keep it quite small, because we want a hydrotherapy pool, not a swimming pool. So, because it's one dog, one therapist, one session, there's such a pressure if you've got like a really big pool to kind of consider using more of that space, and that isn't that is not it's a safety. It's a high risk. So these are pods that we had designed that you can see you can take in and take out to optimize your space, and you can put them together. We've got 3, so you can put them as a long run, like Claire's pool on the top left. And we have different size boxes that sit on top of these pods, so we can play around to get the right height for the dog. And because it's a hydro pool, we can play around with our water level like you can in a treadmill really easily. So we can get the optimum height of the water for the dog, whether we're using either bits of equipment. So it's really cool.
I love those photos. It makes for me, who I haven't ever had a dog to take to hydro yet, but I mean I've got dog, but they've always been young. For me, seeing those photos, it makes everything a lot clearer, and actually it helps me to understand, and I'm sure it helps a lot of people understand then what you're talking about with the static and the dynamic work, because you can better appreciate why you can change it and how you can do both, but with the same equipment?
I think this is the thing. You're looking at the versatility of the equipment. There's some downfalls for a few of them, and we'll talk about those, challenges for your senior dog. And we're going to talk about that right at the end, what the challenges are. So it's getting the best fit for your dog, and definitely finding the therapist that works the way you would like, the therapy session to work for your dog as well. So bottom left, can you see? This is Maria Johnson, standout veterinary physiotherapists like Claire and canine hydrotherapists, and multiple qualifications both of them have. And that is a very high-end agility dog. Can you see how calm and focused that entry is? This is a directed, this is so important. This idea of dogs just free reigning in and out of the pool, being chucked things, pick up off the water, that's nothing to do with hydrotherapy. It's really dangerous. So this is about the therapist has a manual transmission with that dog. And a lot of the dogs for conditioning work are moving in the water beautifully, but they need guidance. They're not kind of left with their hands off. There'll always be that transmission hand, but it'll be very light. It's like power assisted steering kind of thing. So, whereas your elderly dog, your senior arthritic dog, they may not be able to go up the ramp. They may have a lift, and then hopefully the therapist is using a therapeutic lift rather than just a gross handling lift, because that really optimizes, think of the car engine, the dog's proprioceptive system and muscles all ready to go. And you don't want to stall your car. So they'll have lots of different ways they can get your dog into the body of water safely. So again, that's something for owners to realize. There's choices. So the bottom picture on the right is just to show you, because it's really hard when the water's that clear. People don't realize the water levels. Can you see the second picture in? That's Sarah, who works with me. Most amazing standout veterinary physiotherapists, canine hydrotherapists. I'm just so privileged to have worked with so many amazing therapists. Lots of tuning in. I can see some names coming here as well, which is really exciting. So again, she's got her arm in the water, so you can appreciate the depth. And we keep records for all our clients, so we know what's the right level for them for certain things. So for an elderly dog, a senior dog, isn't it wonderful? When they kind of lose their back end and they're struggling to move, and they can go in a body of water that could be in a treadmill or a pool, and you can adjust that water level so they can really stretch and stand up fully with support. Not too much so they go into their motor sequence, but enough to give them that support. And then you can use therapeutic techniques like sensory work on their hamstrings and epaxials. And these are all things therapists cover in all their courses from level 3 to level 7. 7 being top, 3 is where the starting point is. And it's just a journey. So it's so exciting.
So what about, you were talking earlier about rest periods for the dog. Yes,
very important.
So how do you enable that within the session?
It really easily. You're going to have rest periods on these different pods or within the treadmill, and also on the external platforms, especially when the dogs come out of water, out of that body of water. You're not just going to take them out and they just kind of go. They're going to be steadied. They're going to be given opportunities to find their land legs. Because, like when you've been swimming or you've been doing any kind of activity, and you feel great. And then you come out and then your legs kind of wobble a little bit. So, and they're going to be taking health checks. They're going to be, it's mindful, focused, careful work. And that's canine hydrotherapy. And it's the most amazing experience to be able to work with dogs and see changes within the session, and then after one session. So, and I just want to shout out as well for there's a hand. Can you see a hand with legs? It's not very clear. That's underwater. That's an underwater shot of a hand.
Yes, I can.
So that's to the right of Maria on the bottom left, and that's a hand, and that's a particular technique that we do with lots of dogs called proprioceptive paw placement, which is really enhanced by being in that body of water to do. So these are a lot of techniques you can use on land, in the shower, and in water. And then this is what the therapists go and do their extensive training. And, they're really committed to progressing their techniques to sort of move forwards, because they are passionate about dogs, are hydrotherapists and canine therapists. They want to do well. Unfortunately, well-intentioned might have been guided by other things, but we want it to be safe and effective.
That's interesting, actually, that the proprioceptive things there, because it's something that as vets we will assess on a regular basis in a lot of different cases, but very much so with arthritic dogs. And you do see it deteriorate or improve the proprioceptive the deficits,
Yes.
and through physio and hydro, I have seen that, and so I can understand totally. It doesn't seem like a big thing.
No, but then neither does Pilates, or if you've ever done Pilates, it looks like you're doing nothing. But we do canine Pilates, PAW, which I'll go next. But hugely beneficial because it's. And I think the key thing is that it's about this professional bond between the therapist and the dog in their professional care. It's they're not their pets, they're not their loved ones. These are professional bonds of trust and confidence, because if the dog chooses to work with the therapist in the water and they give that mindful consent, they're actively engaging. And once they do, it's hugely proprioceptively enriched, rather than a dog just going through a sequence. So, and so there's so many different ways to improve movement, and we just focus on what gets the results the quickest and is very long lasting for the dog. That dog. So the next
kind of techniques. What kind of techniques are we talking about then that you're doing in the water?
Oh, I'm going to move on. Can I just say my next myth buster?
Yes, of
because
course,
it's an important one. So 10 years ago, people would say the word swimming a dog or treadmilling a dog or walking a dog, which is a really strange thing to say. But actually, it's all about that professional bond between the therapist and the dog. It's about devising that individual aquatic plan that's based on an assessment, and then it's reassessment each time. And you want to really improve the dog's movement, because at the end of the day, for the elderly arthritic dog, it's about their quality of their life, that they can toilet independently, and also support the owners, because they are so involved in this whole process. It is. It is.
Yeah, definitely.
So we've got that. So it's about devising an individual program. So the techniques. So what happens is every therapist who has gone through the level 3 certificate or some training will have what's called a therapeutic toolbox to pull techniques out of. You're always going to have your favorite techniques, because they'll be the ones you've used a lot or you find work really well for you. So within the water, there's going to be loads of different things that people can do. It's not about using every technique on one dog. It's about having the skills to clinically reason and take out the technique that you're going to use. And on the right of this picture, this is an elderly dog coming out of a treadmill and being directed with movement shaping. So there's canine movement enrichment techniques. So I'm sure everybody's heard of feeding enrichment, environmental enrichment. So we also have canine movement enrichment techniques. And this consists of two things: clinic enrichment, where we enrich the clinic environment to optimize the biomechanical movement of the dog and work with their behaviors. So they work with us in a focused, mindful way. And also therapeutic handling techniques. And there's a whole range of different techniques that we've been using. And these have been on the go for a long, long time. We've got therapeutic showering techniques. We have things called alignment techniques. Because I heard a comment, someone says, oh, you should use a treadmill because they're walking in it, because if they're in the pool, their legs are out everywhere. Well, not if the therapists have got their hands on the dog and applying considered. And then people say, oh, well, they're not really using their hind legs, but they will be if they're doing static work. That's much more meaningful to them. So actually the alignment is about engaging the core, and it's dynamic core stability work, which is awesome, because you can't do that on land. So,
I think a lot of people will be familiar with that, because a lot of people do Pilates and yoga and stuff like that themselves. So why would it be any different? The core stability helps.
It's all about the core for the dog. They have 4 legs for 2 reasons. We have 2 legs and 2 arms, but they have 4 legs for 2 reasons. Fundamentally, they are designed to move forwards. Have you ever seen a dog running backwards to its food or its owner or to chase a ball? No, and we do know that working backwards, which it was like a bit of a craze, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago, is detrimental to the biomechanical design of the dog. We do know that movement. There was this whole thing of yo-yoing dogs where they'd pull them backwards and let them go forwards. And all the movement for your elderly senior dog, very important that it's a forward motion, the sagittal plane, because that's how the dog's designed to move. And that's what we want to improve on land. And then we've got these amazing movement shaping techniques. These are not new. These have been around since the 60s and the 70s, being used by therapists in hydrotherapy. So, and then we've got the aquatic canine we've named it Canine Pilates, which we've kind of introduced into the industry, and a Canine Tai Chi. So these are about sequences of movement, because movement is not organized at a joint. It's not one muscle doing anything. It's about a sequence, and it's orchestrated. So we need for our elderly dogs to know, what are they struggling with? So those are the bits we're going to focus on, because they can't do everything. We need to focus on what they need. So these are just, and then there's the aquatic manual therapies of really taking off finally, thank goodness. And that's aquatic massage techniques, that's aquatic joint mobilization techniques, soft tissue mobilization techniques, massage techniques, but in the water. These are very mindful, focused activities, or in the shower, with the shower. So they're absolutely awesome. And again, the therapist is going to work in their scope of practice. So wherever they are on their career journey, they know their limitations, but that's why it's not just a qualification. It's the CPD that they're doing ongoing, because they're obliged to all the time. Yeah. So they'll, you know, when you're looking for your therapist, it's really exciting because they are so committed, hardworking professionals, and they'll be doing CPD like this, you know, all the time. Yeah. Because it's always for them about offering the very best service for the dogs and their care. To date. Yeah, absolutely up to date. So we use aquatic proprioceptive tracks, which are so awesome and brilliant for the dog because they can manage to move on them in a pool or a treadmill. And also,
so what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Do you mean like we can see in the photo there?
No, that's just being very mindful. That's not a proprioceptive track. So we use things called visual indicators, and we use things called proprioceptive tracks. But I'm going to talk about the track tomorrow a little bit, because it's a small bit of equipment. But yeah. Okay. So, and these are things that owners can do at home as well, and be directed by their therapist what they need to be doing.
And it's not expensive to do it at home, is it? It's not like you're asking them to get horrendously expensive equipment.
They've got stuff at home. They just need direction to understand the principles of it. You can buy some, but they kind of have lost the concept of what it's all about. So if people want to know about the proprioceptive track, I'm really happy to share that tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, let me know if that's what you want. We can kind of cover that.
Yeah, I think it would be quite interesting because, like you say, it's something that people can do at home, and So we'll talk about that tomorrow. That's fine.
Perfect. And then there's functional task rehabilitation, because actually it's meeting the expectations of the owners. You know, they're going to come and you're going to reassess and find out how the dog's doing. And they're going to say, actually, they've really struggled in the snow. So we had a lot of snow recently. They loved it, but they've overdone it, or they didn't like it. So they've not walked as much as maybe as they would have, and they've got stiffer. Yeah. They're just struggling. That I'm finding them behind the door in the morning and they're struggling to get up. So understanding what functional activity they're struggling with is amazing for the therapist to then chunk down those sequences and be able to deliver it in water to improve the movement.
Yeah.
So functional task rehabilitation is so important for the dog, because, you know, if you've got an elderly dog and they're not able to toilet, or they've changed the way they toilet, or they're sort of not able to go down enough, or they're moving forward and leaving. It is. And if they're falling back in their poos and pees, or not being able to get forward, so we can make a dramatic impact on toileting with functional sequences and tail work. I mean, seriously, it's just astonishing. So it's really exciting work. And then we've got a whole range of proprioceptive canine movement therapies. Nowhere in there am I saying walking or swimming. So it's moved on from that totally.
Hugely, yeah.
So each canine hydrotherapist, this is what's so exciting. There's no threat and there's no race. We're all on a career journey as therapists. And it's about enjoying that journey, and it's about selecting CPD, and like this is CPD, or this is information that works for you. So it's finding clinical practitioners that deliver training that's up to date. And as a training provider, you know, and I was the first UK accredited clinical educator in veterinary physiotherapy in the UK. You know, I'm on my own career journey. You never get to the end. There's always something you need to learn. No, you can never know everything, can you? And things change all the time. So it's updating and things. And, you know, so I plan out by reflecting and going, what am I looking to sort of work on or focus? Yeah. And so that's the other thing, is the CPD should always be relevant to what the therapist wants to achieve. So therapists understand their limitations. They work in their scope of practice. That's part of being a professional. And they are the hardest working people, because behind the scenes, looking after all of this equipment and scrubbing down everything is tough. And the plant, you know, there's all the stuff behind the scenes as well that they do to be able to present their amazing services.
Yeah, tough job, definitely.
So senior dogs and canine hydrotherapy. So this is always what's the best equipment to use for the senior dog. So I really hope this has helped people realize it's all about the therapist, their bond with their dog, and what they choose to do in that water, you know, because there's so many different options. It's about, it's moved on from this idea. It's just two activities that sort of like went a long time ago. And the therapist is going to assess each dog. They're going to do health checks, and they're going to find out all about the dog so that they can then put together that prioritized problem list. And from that, they're going to do some goal setting. Now, in the industry, we call it SMART goal setting. So it's going to be specific for your dog, relevant to dog movement, to canine movement. You know, it's really achievable. You should always set your dog up to achieve. You never want to over exert the dog. You never want to make it so complicated you lose their confidence and trust, and they decide not to work with you. They just decide, head down, get through this.
Got to be positive every time they come,
all the time. Really? And then you're not, you know, you're going to have this negotiation. It comes back to that communication, Nikki. You're going to discuss this with the owner so they have realistic expectations. It's not about getting into the water. It's about making everything very proprioceptively enriched and working with the dog and giving the dog choices. And you know, for the senior dog, they may have a therapeutic shower linked to movement shaping in the wet room. And with that therapeutic shower, it may be aquatic massage therapy. You know, it could be lots of different things. It's not about the treadmill or the pool. It's about the package of treatment techniques put together to meet the needs of that individual dog.
Or dog, And I think that's, I mean, it has come up a couple of times on the questions tonight about, you know, for an arthritic dog, would you say this is better or that is better? And I mean, I think Barbara's just answered that question really well, because it's it's neither or both. It can be, you know, it's very specific to the therapist and the dog.
Yes, definitely.
And it's going to be different for everybody. So, try not to have any hang-ups about, you know, I'm doing the wrong thing with my dog, or I think I should be doing this because somebody told me that the treadmill is better for my autistic dog.
That's not going to help you or your dog. And that anxiety and anxiousness about, let's try this or this versus that. Actually, we said that right at the beginning. It's multimodal, working with the multidisciplinary team. If you're an independent outpatient center or if you're within the vet practice, you know, it's working really closely with each other. And I think the key thing I've said for like 25 years with dogs, less is more. It's about high quality. It's never about quantity. Okay. And actually, at the end of the day, we want to improve their land-based motion, their land-based functional day-to-day tasks that they need to do to have wonderful lives.
Confidence, you know, and happiness.
So it's managing expectations.
It doesn't need a lot sometimes. It is just the little things. So I'll just go back through just a couple of these. So I think some of them you have answered as we've gone through. So we have here a question from Swati. Well, not a question, but she's just saying, my St. Bernard suffers from arthritis, and I would like to introduce the hydrotherapy to increase its mobility without too much effort on the joints. Well, hopefully, Swati, from listening to this evening, you'll have the confidence to go and you know, and ask for that help, and hopefully have a little bit more confidence in what you're asking for or expecting as well.
Yes, definitely. And you know, with that, with a giant breed as well, come added risk. So it may be that there's going to be two therapists working with that wonderful dog. And if you think about it, the entry and exits in and out of the equipment is the high risk area once you're in the equipment. Then with your senior dog, you've got to think, you see, the pool is always full of water. Okay, so it's a high risk if you kind of get the dog ready and do everything in there and the dog's all a bit chaotic and running around. So some therapy centers will have a separate space that's safe to negotiate changing the dog into whatever they're going to be wearing in the water. Whereas in the treadmill, the water goes and it comes. However, the doors, once they're shut for a senior arthritic dog, it can be a long time for them to be standing as that water rises and then falls before they can go out. So it's looking at the equipment and deciding what fits that dog best. It's never about put this condition in that and this that used to be how it was a long time ago because we, you know, but now we've moved forward. It's about the competencies of the therapist and understanding the techniques and how to optimize that experience. So with a brachycephalic breed, you know, being in a treadmill and then the water goes up, there's a lot of humidity.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, you go low into a treadmill, there's a lot of humidity. Whereas in a pool where they're on a water level, half in and half out, but they're on a pod and they're out of the water, and it's about how long that chest is in the water as well for, you know. So, but really it's about the behavior. So some dogs will find the underwater treadmill claustrophobic, panic, worry, get out.
Which you can understand, can't you? If you're a little dog and you've got this towering,
or a big dog, that's
yeah.
kind of a free reign, lovely, free, independent spirit, and just I'm just getting out. Yeah,
it may not be suitable.
Yeah, and then for some elderly dogs, maybe getting into the pool and out is just too complicated. So the therapist is going to optimize the equipment they use and find the best solution for each dog.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got Susie was here last week and made some comments and questions as well. So she says, I've been in practice for 16 years using only the underwater treadmill with profound results. It helps so many conditions, and it never ceases to amaze me how dogs respond with such positivity and how they improve dramatically. It's so rewarding and satisfying when you can give a previously compromised dog a better quality of life.
Absolutely,
I think that's
Susie.
the reason that you're all there, aren't you? This is probably
the passion out there is
feeling.
I gave up humans for dogs. I mean, you know, I changed my whole career for dogs because they're really worth it. And I think it comes down to when you feel that passion coming through, you know, these are therapists who are focused on being dog focused and owner focused, not business focused, because, you know, it's a very expensive pieces of equipment to buy. They're very expensive to run. They're doing this because they're passionate about helping dogs, which is brilliant. Yes.
Yeah. I have to say, and I think most vets would say the same, we kind of do it for that reason too. You know, it's so rewarding when you can come home at the end of the day and think, I really made a difference to that dog or that cat today. So yeah, you know, we're all these health professionals or vet health professionals, we're all kind of in it for the same thing, I think. We're not making loads of money, that's for sure. So that was a question there we had about the underwater treadmill. Let's look there. So we had.
I just bring this back to some of the pictures. Just trying to change it. I love that picture so much. That's a really elderly dog. I just love the senior dogs. I can't help it. So yeah,
I know. So they're the best, aren't they? The underwater, so we've got one from Kenzie saying the underwater treadmill really helped with her dog post TPLO. Definitely an indication for that. So this is after cruciate surgery, and it's really, really useful and will help with comfort and muscle mass and lots of things. So this is the most important thing. We work with the dog. Yeah, so Debbie's just confirming there what we said earlier. The most important thing is that we work with the dog and not just on it.
Debbie, those are my words for about the last 25 years. I just love it. I love it. Yeah, it is. We are totally dog focused, and also really important supporting the owners, you know, and then being able to give them the appropriate advice for their senior dogs when they leave your therapy session and they go home. Then they need that support to know what's the best thing to do. And depending on your scope of practice, that's going to be more extensive or less. And again, when they come, having those analytical and clinical reasoning skills to listen, you know, do the reassessment, listen what the owner is saying to you. And I know at the moment it might be separated into video calls, you know, and phone calls and the treatment, but it's working like a really together triage. I just love it. It's the best job ever. Really is.
I would say that about my job as well, but
definitely.
So we've got a question here from Tiffany. I'm not sure which one you're meaning, Tiffany, but you might know, Barbara. She said, is that a handmade ramp for the treadmill there?
Yes, it is. And also, it's not our new ones. Our new ones are the most awesome things because I've worked it all out with therapeutic angles for senior dogs. So I hadn't got a shot of the new treadmill ramps because we are moving. We do have to build because they're developing the site. So, you know, it's been on and off for 3 years. So I've got these new ramps. I'm so excited to share lots of the techniques that we're using because we use them therapeutically. So we do decline work, incline work. We can use them for showering as well, which you saw in that picture with the Bernese where you've got them on the ramp. So you know, and it's really just adapting the equipment. And you can do aquatic massage therapy within the pool, and you can do it within the treadmill. So this is why people, you know, love coming for their CPD training and extending what they can offer as a service, you know. So it's just brilliant.
And there's no reason why you can't get things made for you that's going to fit your...
Everything I've had has been made for me. Sometimes it's a little frustrating because I've had prototypes and I've got them, and then people on the back of that will kind of sell them as a product to somebody else. It's nothing to do with me. I figured out what I needed for the space that I had, and the new setup we'll have. I will figure out what's the best thing for the dogs I see. I see a huge number of complex dogs, lots of lovely senior dogs, lots of complex neurological cases. So my equipment's going to be geared for them. Lots of large breeds, giant breeds, you know.
The things you see the most frequently, you need to be able to deal with.
It's going to be different countries, different experiences, different needs. So, Amanda Pratt, one of our lovely clients. Just I can see some names in the comments. But thank you so much for all your comments. And you know, if you found this useful and you want to know more, please do come tomorrow, because we're going to have some awesome stuff to share. And
please keep asking your questions.
And we'll add them in, because can you see the poster lower down? If I just bring the poster lower down, we're building this poster with you. And I know it was a bit weird at the beginning, people didn't quite get it, but this is what we do, information posters, and just get information out there for people. And then when we come, these are our questions. These are our questions for tomorrow. And then tomorrow will be like loads of pictures and loads more information. So if you've got any more questions,
preceptive tracks for tomorrow.
We do. But I think
we've got lots of people, you know, with sharing their fantastic hydrotherapy experiences. So any other questions, please do come tomorrow and ask away. We will be talking a little bit further about the equipment tomorrow and anything else that comes up. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much again, Barbara, for your time this evening.
You're so welcome.
And hopefully we'll see you all again tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your evening.
Definitely enjoy the rest of the evening. Can I just say thank you so much for everybody for attending and giving up their time at 7 o'clock in the evening or wherever you are in the world. I really appreciate it. And if you like tonight, please send some love and likes. It's just great to have that support and a community. And that's what I love about CAM. Just reaches everywhere. Sharing information is just perfect.
Everywhere.
Thank you.
So we'll see you all tomorrow. And if you do want any more information about the lives from last week, have a look on the CAM website or message us, and we can arrange for you to be able to access them if you're struggling. But for now, we will see you all tomorrow.